and welcome to Logan Sounds Off, where I talk about books, music, and a whole lot more. I'm your host, Logan Kelly. Hello, and welcome to Logan Sounds Off. Today I am interviewing Rick O Shea. Rick, how are you today?
I'm great, and this is one of the weirdest interviews I've ever done. This is absolutely brilliant. I can't wait to see what's going to happen.
Trust me, it's going to be really fun. First off, I want to ask you, for those who don't know you, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I can, and there's loads of people who don't know me, so that's fine. I'm a radio presenter. I work for RTE Gold. I've used to work for 2FM before that for about 17 years. And before that, I worked in radio in Dublin, and I worked for a radio station. It was called Atlantic 252 that people might not know. And I started off forever ago, literally in another century, working for local radio. When I was like 19, I got my first job in radio when I was 19, which is 31 years ago at this point.
It's actually amazing what you've accomplished so far in your life.
No, it's amazing what you've accomplished at this point. Me, when I was your age, I was just faffing around. I was playing football with my friends. I did not have my own podcast.
Well, do you know, thank you, Rick. That's amazing coming from you. Now I'm going to start off with the big hobby of yours, books and reading. And I know as well you love music and radio, so we're going to talk about that as well. But first I want to talk about books. So when you were younger, what kind of books did you read?
I am kind of so my memory goes back as far as starting off with, the early stuff that I read when I was a kid. So for me, when I was growing up, like YA books weren't really a thing. There definitely weren't half as many kids' books as there are now. So I was still reading like Enid Blyton books. So I read like The Famous Five, and I read The Secret Seven, and I read The Hardy Boys and Alfred Hitchcock's Three Investigators. And because, there weren't an awful lot of book series like that out for kids who were my age when I was like, 7, 8, 9, 10, and when I started reading stuff. And then when I got a little bit older, I started reading science fiction, and science fiction became my great love in life. So I started off with Arthur C. Clarke, and I read Isaac Asimov, and I read Douglas Adams' A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And then it just kept going, and here I am.
You know what, actually, it's so funny. Sorry, my headphone was a bit weird there. It's so funny, but I started off when I was 6 or 7 with The Famous Five.
Nice.
I'm massive into sci-fi now. Like, I know I don't always read sci-fi, but I really, really love sci-fi.
And so what's like a couple of your favorite sci-fi books? What do you really love?
Well, a book that I started and I never got to finish, but I'm definitely going to go back to, was Dune by Frank Herbert.
Oh my God, I thought you were going to say Dune by Frank. I started Dune by Frank Herbert when I was probably about 15. I never finished it either. It's okay. You're allowed not to finish it. It's very long.
And now I'm going to finish it. I am going to persevere to the near 600 pages that it is. Now on a more fantasy side, I love Scudagree Pleasant. It's a great YA book, and it's kind of hard now to kind of see which is sci-fi and which is fantasy, because a lot of it people would kind of confuse the two. Well, as you can see in my book collection now, I'm kind of looking through them.
I do that sometimes when I'm doing interviews. I do that sometimes. I look over my shoulder at my own bookshelf.
Yeah.
So you look at your bookshelf. It's fine. You tell me what you got over there.
I read a series, actually, Artemis Fowl. I don't know if that's sci-fi or fantasy.
Artemis is a weird one, isn't it? By the great Owen Colfer.
Yeah. It's like Owen Colfer, I find so weird to read. Like he's like a modern day children's Philip Pullman.
He will love that. He will think that's the best thing ever. Hello, Owen, when you watch this, because you will watch this.
Philip Pullman. Also, again, that's a great sci-fi book. The Amber Spyglass, The Subtle Knife and Northern Lights, His Dark Materials.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and The Book of Dust. I'm going to be reading pretty soon. And then also other things like that as well. Just small little books that I've started only to get into sci-fi really recently.
Can I say you've got great taste one way or the other? You've still got great taste even at this stage. You're like, yeah, you're about 10 years ahead of me. So when I was your age. So yeah, that's great. Go for it.
Thank you very much. And next, I have a bit of a weird question. So
Okay.
you have a book club, the Rick O'Shea Book Club, and I believe it has over nearly 40,000 members, which is actually mental.
Yep.
So how do you find and how do you pick out books for your book club?
It's not easy, and it doesn't work like a real book club. So I've been doing this for almost 10 years now, and it was at a point where people wanted to talk about books, and we were talking about books on Twitter, and we were talking about books on Facebook. And I thought, well, let's try and find somewhere where I could put all of these book conversations in one place. So I started a Facebook group, and that's what it is. So I do recommend books in it, and I talk about the books that I'm reading. And once a week, I do a post where I ask people what they're going to read for the weekend. But the rest of it is just people talking about books that they love, stuff that they've just found, or books that they've bought forever ago and they've just started to read. It's very messy. It's a very messy space, but I'm okay with that because I quite like the messy, and I like people throwing out there what it is that they're reading at the moment. So the stuff that I talk about in the book club and the stuff that occasionally I pick as like books of the month, that's just whatever I'm reading right now and whatever I think people might love.
Wow, that's amazing. Organized chaos. Like, if anybody.
Oh, I didn't say it was organized. Oh no, there's no organization. Oh my God, no. It's just
okay.
chaos. It's just the chaos bit.
Then again, there's nothing wrong with that. There's
No,
nothing wrong with that.
No.
And I think you'd agree. So if anybody's into books, I would definitely recommend, if you have a Facebook account, please join Rick O'Shea's group. It's actually amazing. And next, I want to ask you a question about, you hosted the poetry program on RT Radio 1. How did you find that? Because that's very interesting.
It was weird, and it's about 8-9 years ago now. It was the first time I'd ever done anything when I was presenting something in arts, and I did the book show after that for a couple of years as well. So yeah, it was a steep learning curve, and it was a tough one to begin with, but I met a lot of really nice, interesting people through it, and I met some people who I kind of still know to this day who are poets. So yeah, it was tough but interesting.
You know, I think like anybody who loves novels, some of you who might be listening now who like novels, love poetry. Me myself, I quite like poetry. It's very weird. Like, I know it might sound pretentious coming from an 11-year-old, and I'm saying, oh, I like poetry. That doesn't mean that I'd be reading it all the time. I wouldn't have books of poetry on my shelf. I mean, if somebody reads out a bit of poetry on the radio, I just love listening to it because it's very interesting.
Logan, nothing sounds pretentious when you are you. When you're you, if you like it, just like it. Forget about everybody else. Forget about what they say. Just roll with it because that's what you're into.
Thanks, Rick. And now I want to move on to another part of your life. Actually, it's something very interesting, and a lot of people will know you for this if they're not into books. Growing up, what music or radio did you listen to?
Yeah, well, when I was like a kid, it was two things. So it was like the radio that my parents would have on, and when I was growing up, like commercial radio didn't really exist in Ireland. So it was like Radio 1 and the music that was played on Radio 1, and 2FM had just started when I was like 6 years old. So that was still kind of new. And there was a lot of trad music in my house because my dad is into trad music. So bands like Planksty and Dave Donnan and bands, anything that was to do with traditional Irish music, my dad loved. So there were loads of those in the house. And then everything else that I ended up hearing around me. And then I got older and I got into Lou Reed and Van Morrison and Leonard Cohen. And then I started presenting music shows when I was in college. And then it all kind of went from there. And these days, it's everything. It's pretty much everything. Because now with Spotify, I can listen to almost any song that's ever existed in the history of recorded music. So if I think I might like something and I want to dig into it, I just go off on little rabbit holes on Spotify. And then I find that, there's jazz music from the 20s that I really like. Or, there's an album just been released last week that's great. So, these days it's everything too.
And now I'm going to actually say something there about Spotify. A lot of stuff is on Spotify, and I completely agree with you with your answer there. And one time I went onto Beethoven's page on Spotify. Nice. I was scrolling through the albums. After about 5 minutes, I was still on 2023 albums.
Yeah.
They're always releasing Beethoven compilations. But
Mhm.
anyways, that was a bit of a weird tangent. So next up, I wanted to ask, I bet you never planned to be a radio presenter.
Nope.
What
Nope.
what happened there? Because it's very interesting, this story.
It's accidental. So I never wanted to be a radio presenter. I had no interest in it. I liked listening to radio and I liked music. And when I started doing it, I did it for the very first time properly. I did a radio competition when I was 15. I didn't win, but I did it and it was fun and I kind of liked it. And then in the year between when I finished my leaving cert and I started in college, I did some hospital radio. And then I did some radio when I started in college in UCD in 1991. So I fell into it. And then I realized I was kind of okay at it and people wanted me to do a bit more. And then I just did some more and some more. And then one day it was my full-time job. I had no interest in it. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. It was never radio, but I kind of fell into it. And here I am. And I'm still not really sure what I want to be when I grow up.
It's actually amazing, the story. I actually, when I read it in the article, I was just there, and I was laughing out of how interesting it was and how peculiar the events happened. Not obviously at you, but it was just going. It's so interesting how you became such an amazing DJ. So now, next up, a bit of a deeper question for you.
I like these.
I do too. And what was it like stepping into the radio scene when you started? And what is it like now, in your opinion?
Ooh, interesting. Okay, so when I started, it was kind of new. And I don't mean new, like radio wasn't a new thing, but like I was 19 when I started. It was 1992. I've done the maths right, I think. So 1992. And all of the like commercial radio stations around, all the local radio stations, they were only up and running a couple of years. So for a lot of them, they were kind of new things and people were still finding their way and stuff was changing and some survived and some didn't. So it was kind of all a bit kind of rough and ready. Particularly, I started in local radio. So I started in East Coast in Wicklow back in 1992. And then I went into Wexford for a while and I was on Southeast Radio. And so that was all a bit, a bit rough and ready and fun because, there were a lot of people like me who were that age and just getting started in radio. What's it like these days? I don't know. And I have these conversations whenever people, whenever I get to talk to kids who are in media societies in colleges and they all want to work in radio now, I go, I don't know if radio is still going to exist in like 15 years time. It's not going to be the same thing it is now because, media is changing so quickly. So music will still be there and there will still be room for people like me to pick certain types of music and for people to play it and listen to it. But radio, like music radio, like I do, I don't know. And so it's going to be completely changing. It's a very uncertain place to get involved in these days. It's a good question.
I can definitely agree with you on that. But I do have to say something about this. And I had a bit of a weird but brilliant conversation with Ed Smith about this. Spotify made an AI DJ. I listened to it.
I've heard it's not very good. I haven't listened.
Really awful.
Yeah.
The voice is weird. It's kind of really uncanny, nearly. It's just, it's creepy. I like, it plays good music. But most of the time when I'm doing my Logan's Files, I listen to loads of different types of music. Sometimes I really hate the music. So the AI DJ is picking up stuff like that. So, and I just think an AI DJ like that can't replace real radio. So there has to be some work into that. And I don't know how long it took to make the AI DJ, but I presume it took at least a year.
Logan, I hope, I have my fingers crossed. I'd like to keep doing my job. That'd be amazing. I would love that. So I hope that you're right.
Yeah. Well, now half the time I'm wrong, Rick. So
that means half the time you're right. That's pretty good.
Well, then again, see, you found the positive side of that. That was brilliant. Thank you, Rick. And now for another question I want to ask. You have a show called Afternoon Gold, which is an amazing show, by the way. And you play a lot of cool, really, really cool, and sometimes a bit of older music from the 70s and 80s. Nothing wrong with that. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. I love music from those decades. But how do you find picking music for your show?
Okay, I'm going to tell you this, and I haven't really told anybody else this before, mainly because no one has asked me this question before. It's a great question, Logan. Thank you. So when I started in Gold in 2017, so about 6 years ago now, I made a load of Spotify playlists just for me. So I have a Spotify playlist of 60s music and 70s and 80s and 90s, and I have them all, and I'm the only person who has access to them. So when I go in every day, and I go, I wonder what I'm in the phone for. I hit shuffle and I go, oh, that's okay. And then I go, no, I don't want that one. Skip, skip, skip. And then I go, so each of these lists is huge. Each of these has a couple of thousand songs on them. And so it means there's a randomness to the things I play every day. And I sit there and I go, that's a great idea. And I stick it into the running order for that day. And then I go, yeah, I don't like that. And then I keep skip, 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 skip. And that's how I pick all the music for the show. It took a long time to get those lists together. That's the only thing. In the very beginning, it took months to just make sure those lists by decade were all good. But that's how I do it. And there's a shocked look on your face. You look seriously shocked.
Oh, sorry. God, I'm just like, wow. Out of all the ways of being a DJ, that is probably the best, like, ever.
Well, like when I started doing this,
thousands of songs.
And when I started doing this, like when I started working in 2FM, for instance, like in 2001, so it's 22 years ago, I would have done the same thing, but with CDs. So I had like a huge collection of CDs at home. I had boxes of the stuff, and I'd do the same thing. I'd flick through them and then find things that I want to play. This just means there's a lot less clutter around the house.
Do you know what that actually? After this, I'm going to actually have to lie down for a bit. After this,
I hate that's happened. This is awful.
No, in like a really good way. I'm just gonna have to sit down and question my life for a bit. So yeah. Next question about your show, Afternoon Gold. How do you find hosting your own show? Because it's a question that not many people ask, because a lot of people don't think, well, I wonder what he likes about hosting his own show, or she likes. So I just want to ask you now, Rick, how do you find hosting your own show, having your own show?
Well, I like the power. So, I'm power hungry, and I don't have a lot of power in life. So the power of being able to go in every day and going, I can play whatever I want. That's pretty good. So I do like that. And I like getting requests and getting messages from people, because it's nice to know that somebody likes what you do so much that, they're on a beach in Spain, they're on holidays, and they brought you with them, or they're listening in work, somewhere, wherever they are. So, it's nice, and it's warm, and we have a nice bunch of people who listen to the show every day, and it's very low maintenance, and there's not a lot of hassle, and I work with nice people, and, you can't ask for more than that.
Again, life-changing answers here. I can definitely agree with you about being power hungry. Me myself,
I can tell.
Me myself, I am a control freak. Like
I can tell that too. Yeah,
an actual control freak. And my family would definitely agree. But
in a good way. In a good way.
In a very, very good way. But also, I do love where you were saying about text messages coming in. Now, obviously, I don't have text messages coming in while I'm doing a show, because I won't be doing a show for a little while. But I do like, after I do a 5, somebody comes back with a message, and it's always very lovely to know that there's somebody out there who's actually looking at this and responding, because it just shows, like, we talk a lot in school, in my school, about active listening. Our principal would come into our class and say, okay, guys, we need to work on the active listening. What's active listening? And he'd point out to some of the guys, what's active listening? And one of the things is engagement. So in a way, it's kind of like active listening when somebody's giving you that text or that message or a video saying, hi, I've been doing this. And it's really, really nice. Would you agree about that? Or do you think I'm mad?
No, I think you're completely right. And I think active listening is one of those things that makes somebody a good interviewer as well. Now, being completely honest with you, you're probably already in the top 5% of people who've ever interviewed me because your questions are good. You've got them all ready and lined up in front of you. You're very good at listening. You ask questions off the back of that. You're a better interviewer, I mean, probably than I am. I'm going to be honest with you. And it's kind of sad for me to see that because it's like,
I'm
that's it.
sorry,
That's
Rick.
it. That's it. Game is over. It's like Logan's
Oh
better than I am, and I'm just going to stop doing my job now. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm done because
no.
Logan's better than me.
I feel bad. Oh no.
You should not feel bad. You should feel good about this. This is a good thing.
Now I feel good and I feel bad. I'm really confused now.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what to feel now. My
Definitely feel good.
body's
Feel
my
100%
mind
good.
says feel bad. You're saying to feel good. Okay, I'm just gonna move on from that.
Move on to the next question. Good one.
Yeah. Now this one I think you're gonna love
Okay.
because I have asked this and it is very funny to hear the answer of, and I think
Okay,
you'll
go.
think it's very funny as well.
Okay.
You have been a radio presenter, in RTE anyways since 2001. Do you have a favorite moment or a funny moment that's happened? Is there that one memory that's just made you laugh or that's made you feel very happy when you think back on them?
Oh yeah, there's loads of things that made me happy when I think back on them, and there's loads of moments that happened where I got the chance to do things that maybe other people don't get to. Like just when Ed Sheeran was becoming really big, I interviewed him a couple of times. So I interviewed him once at Electric Picnic in our roadcaster, in our outside broadcast thing. And he was just starting to sort of become big. And he came in and sat and played a couple of songs with me. And we talked about how he loved trad music and liked going to see people play in bars. And we talked about trad bands that he liked and how he had family here. And I just came away from it. I didn't come away from it going, there's somebody who's going to be one of the biggest music acts on the planet. I just came away from it going, he's nice, I like him. He can come back anytime he wants to. And then about a year later, maybe a couple of years later, he came in on the afternoon show and did an event in front of an invited audience. So people won tickets on my show to come and see him play in RTE. And when we brought him in, we needed like security and there were crowds of people outside who, had no tickets for it. And they had to smuggle him out through the back door. They smuggled him out into a van at the back of the building. And then like he drove off at speed. So that was fun. That was a good day's work. That was different than most of the other ones. Okay,
great. So if I combine a couple of the sentences here, you can make a completely different story. They smuggled him out into a van and they traveled at high speed, and it was very fun. It sounds mad when you think
it's like
about
they were
it.
Kidnapping him in reverse. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was happy.
It's kind of like a safe way of kidnapping. It's kind of like one of my favorite scenes in all the Harry Potter movies is Ron reading out the tea leaves going, "You're gonna suffer, but you're gonna be happy about it," while he's reading the tea leaves for Harry. But no, that's very, very funny actually. And that's actually a really, really good answer to that question. So okay. I really wanted to ask it to you because you've had so much experience with so many different types of people. So now, before I go on to some tips questions, okay. I forgot to ask this question, but this one I really want to ask you. You do the Easton Must Reads list. And I want to ask, how do you find selecting the books for that? That must be really, really hard because there's so many good books out there and that are coming out now.
Okay, it is, but it's also brilliant fun at the same time. So like we do that 4 times a year, and the summer list is coming out in the next couple of weeks, and we've started reading for the autumn list already. So like,
really?
So, hang on, I probably shouldn't show you that. So some of those may be some of the books that I'm reading right now, possibly. Who knows?
Possibly.
It's good fun. And you know what? It's brilliant for 2 reasons. So I get to read a load of books in advance of them coming out, like months in advance of them coming out, which is always fun. And as well as that, I get to pick books that I really love and books that I think people might really like. And a lot of the time, it's books that probably, they don't have the same big marketing budgets that other books do, or they're not big, flashy. It's not authors who are like incredibly well known around the world. I want to be able to say, have a look at this. You might like these guys here instead. So it's good fun. And I spent last night in Eason's in O'Connell Street after the doors were closed with Sinead, and we were filming some stuff that's going to get shown later in the year. So I got to wander around an empty bookshop late at night, which was great fun. and we got to have some fun doing some stupid stuff with books in front of a camera. So it's a nice job. It's good.
I am so jealous of you right now.
I am jealous of me.
No,
I was so jealous of me last night.
I know. Like most 11-year-olds aren't a big fan of books. Sometimes in their teenage years they'll be more fans of books. My favorite shop to go into is a bookshop in Westport called Tertulia, and I interviewed the book owner. So if you like to look at that video, you can check it out on my website and my podcast. But I love bookshops. I mean, today I was in Kilkenny and I walked past a bookshop and I was just looking at it, looking in the door to see what kind of books were in there. And I think like it's very interesting. It's kind of like books are an addiction. Once you get into them, you can't stop because there's
one
so
of the
many
good ones, though.
No, in a good way, really good way.
You know.
And it's not that much of an expensive hobby. Like,
no, and particularly, there are libraries all around the country. Hello to everybody who works in the libraries of Ireland. That they also can stock you up for whatever it is you need anywhere. Tertulia is a great place in Westport. I've been there before. Fair play to them.
Brilliant. Well done.
It's the first thing I do when I'm like in a town in Ireland is I look up wherever the local bookshop is, or if I'm away on holidays somewhere, I'm also that person who goes and buys books in pretty much every city he visits.
Fair enough. I mean, I think if I had the money to do that, I would. And actually, you mentioned Libraries Ireland. Yesterday, I went into Clane Library and I got a
Oh, hello.
Exactly. That's
good
what
stash.
I thought when I saw them. Because I just wanted to start reading a bit during the summer. And it was just really nice to be able to go into the library. And the librarian there, big shout out to Jackie, the librarian in Clane Library, is very helpful and always very kind and gives brilliant recommendations. And some of the authors here actually she got me into. So it's brilliant, the libraries around Ireland. So thank you for answering that question. That's mad actually. So now for my 2 end questions, I usually have 1 end question, which is a tips question, but I have 2 now that are kind of joined.
I feel special. Okay.
you should, Rick. You really should. This doesn't happen too often.
Okay. Go for it.
So I myself love books. I really, really like books. So do you have any recommendations for me or kids my age?
Have you ever read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
I have heard of it and I have seen it before and it's on my list for reading.
Okay. Because I think I was about your age, maybe the first time I read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And it's part of a series, and it's both really funny and something that will stay with you for the rest of your life. And you'll end up quoting it to other people like 20 years from now. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is a good place to go. And when I was your age, he's not really that fashionable anymore. But the first science fiction author I read was Arthur C. Clarke. And I started off with his short stories. He's the guy who wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey, which is start with short stories if you get the chance. So Arthur C. Clarke is another good guy to start with short stories.
You know, I've got the pen right here. So Arthur C. Clarke, I will check him out.
Thank you very much. Let me know what you think.
Definitely read him. So now for the second tips question, and I will let you know what I think. What recommendations do you have for people who aren't into books, but they really want to get into them? What kind of books do you think they should start off with? And if you could, split it between kids and adults to start off.
Okay, well, weirdly, my advice is probably the same for both sets, which is, and it's something I used to do with my kids when they were little and they were kind of in a, I don't know if I would read phase. Just go to a bookshop. Find the things that you're interested in, wander around, look in the shelves, browse, because, you can obviously buy stuff online and that's great, but it's not good for browsing. So find a really good bookshop that you like that has plenty of stuff. If you're a kid or an adult, and just wander around and pick things up and read the back of them and go, okay, yeah, this might be for me. Read the first page, read the second page, read the third page. And then that's how you find things that you might like, and then get a little stash of things and bring them home. Actually,
there's a brilliant publishing company called Chicken House. Have you ever heard of them?
I have not. No, tell me.
I think it's Chicken House, yeah. They have a thing on the back where they say, turn to page 68 for a snippet. Or turn
I love those.
72. it's brilliant because it's not the start of a sentence on most of them. So you're kind of like, what's happening here? And it's so exciting. Actually, I have Huckleberry Finn there, and it says that on the back, and it's really, really cool. And it does help me pick out books, I think. So that's brilliant then. And something else. Now I saw this today, and again, had to kind of sit down after a while. There's a place in Kilkenny. I'll remember the name now in a sec. The Kilkenny Book Centre. And it's in Kilkenny, city or town, whatever you want to call it.
You've got to call it a city. They get very angry if you call it a town. You've got to call it a city.
For those who do call it a town, I'd call it a city. I call it a city myself, but those people who call it a town. But anyways, inside there were these little packages, and it had a blurb on them, €5. And guess what the caption was? Never judge a book by its cover. You buy them without knowing the front cover. You've only read the blurb. You don't know the title, and you bring it home and you unwrap it and you get to read it. And I thought it was the best idea ever. Really, really good.
Yeah, I remember seeing that for the first time years ago, I think in Amsterdam when I was in a bookshop. And then since then, so loads of bookshops have started doing them now, and they're starting to become a big thing. I think they're a great idea. So maybe for people who haven't seen them, it's books that are they're usually wrapped in brown paper. And then on the front of them, it's like magic, mystery, different country, or it's romance, history, something. So yeah, they're a really great idea. They're good fun.
It's very good. The only flaw that I had with it was there was no kids ones.
That's a shame.
There was only
you should have said, excuse me, hello.
Yeah.
I think you should be doing kids versions of this. They would have listened.
Yeah, or at least YA I would have loved as well. Because it's very hard to find books because some books now are too kiddie and they're too YA kind of at my age. So it's brilliant what you've said there about books that I should try and other kids my age. So next time I see some of the guys in my class, I'd say, here, you should maybe read this, because I know there's a load of sci-fi guys in my class. So awesome. Because you've been so good with the last two questions, Rick, I want to give you a bit of a bonus question.
Oh.
Yes.
I'm expecting this. Okay, right, I'm ready. Braced. Okay.
Any tips for up-and-coming radio presenters? I've thrown the bomb behind me. I'm waiting for it to explode.
You see, I don't need to give you tips. I didn't know what was going to happen when I agreed to do this interview. And instead, I have come up against somebody who is probably one of the best 5% of interviewers I have ever come across. You are better than most professional interviewers that I know. I have watched people interview people at festivals who were not as good as you. I don't think you need any tips from me. I just don't.
No. That was a deep answer, and thank you so much. For other people, though, do they need any tips?
For people who aren't you. Oh, there's loads. Okay, they're not you. I think the one thing I always say to people is be really serious that you want to do this for a living. Don't do it because you think it's easy, because as well you will know from putting together your own podcast every week.
It is not easy.
There is so much hard work.
Because of the summer, me and my mom sat down and I said to her, do you know what, I'm going to now work on Logan Sounds Off for at least half an hour to an hour every day. And I do that. I do solid work research. I listen to music to do my Logan's Fives. I record album reviews. I do my book reviews. I think about social media posts. I think about videos to send out to people. There are so many different things that you can do, though, that it's really, really fun. And I can definitely agree with that. It's not easy.
No. And as long as you're having fun, that's a good start.
That was a perfect ending there by Rick. Now, if you ever write a memoir, and I say that to everybody, look through this interview and find one of these quotes and put as the verb. As long as you're having fun doing it, keep doing it. They're perfect one-liners, I'm telling you. So many good one-liners coming out of this.
I will not disagree with you. I'm just never going to write a memoir because who on earth would be interested? It would be the dullest book imaginable. No, thank you. But I will take that on board as advice.
I would buy it in a hardback first edition and I would have it showcased. on my
very
bookshelf.
kind.
I would have it its own space on the bookshelf. Well, thank you so much, Rick. This has been such a fun interview. I have learned
And it's been
so
a fun
much.
interview for me as well. This has been an absolute pleasure, Logan.
I can just tell you look really happy, and it's been brilliant to talk to you, Rick, and it's been a pleasure to have you on. And it's nice that you also had the time to come on. So thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure.
On this podcast.
And I'm sure at some point I will meet you in real life and you'll get an actual high five. There's a high five due at some point.
I hope so, Rick. I can't wait for the day. Bye, Rick.
Thanks, Logan.
I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Logan Sounds Off. You can follow me on X, Facebook, and Instagram at Logan Sounds Off. And don't forget to subscribe and not miss any more cool episodes. Bye, guys.